give it another minute before we start, just to let other folks get in. I think we can get started here in just a minute. Give folks one more minute. I know there's a few more people look like that might be coming in.
Sounds good.
All right, I think we'll kick it off. Welcome everyone. I know it's been a little while since we have gathered. We are streaming this on our CTDSS YouTube channel, and we wanted to convene for an update after the doula presentation from last time on some other updates. I'm not sure we will definitively need the full time today, but we'll definitely use some of it for questions that come up. I just want to thank you again for your time and commitment to this effort. And I know that some folks weren't able to join. I know it's a busy time of the year with the end of the legislative session and other responsibilities ongoing. So I think the most important thing today is probably that we kind of announce our new program go live date, which we alluded to previously, and just kind of outline what we're working on and the upcoming work ahead. And then we'll do a little bit of program updates and some upcoming stakeholder engagement and how we're thinking about approaching that. Next slide. And so formally, we're announcing that we're planning on moving the implementation date to January 1st, 2024. This pushes it out pretty extensively. A lot of this is from feedback that we've heard from some of you, as well as from providers who want to know more information, hear further details, which is understandable. We've had a few delays internally on our side. We've transitioned to the Mercer team for our technical and actuarial support, and many of them are on the call today, helping us kind of rework some of our details and also kind of make sure that the information that we're planning on sharing through our dry runs, where we're going to provide some historical information, data to practices so that they are aware of how they would have performed and how the program would impact their practices. So we're really working through a lot of these details. You'll see that we're still kind of finalizing a few technical design features that we're trying to wrap up. And then we're looking for kind of implementing a lot of the details on it, including actuarial model, the MMIS, which is our payment system or claims processing system, and making sure the coding and those details are ironed out. And then also we recognize the need to do further provider engagement. We'll be sending out communications today in terms of emails and to providers to let them know. We're announcing this at MAPOC and in other forums because obviously we want to let people know that we are delaying. We've heard some of the concerns about making sure there's adequate information, time to digest that before we start this program. We're also working through getting federal authority, which is a work in progress for us. And again, some of this is we need to make sure we have all of the final details in place so that we can submit for authority for SPA approval. So we're working on the technical design, the SPA approval, the modeling, making sure we're ready from a programmatic operational standpoint internally at DSS as well as at CHN and then with the Mercer team. And then we'll be working on doing further provider engagement with forums and webinars, both for the ambulatory providers as well as making sure we're communicating with doula providers as well. So we're, upcoming things that we will be working on to get publicly facing will be some provider bulletins that include details about payment policies and processes. Again, that dry run, the test run of historical data that we want to get to providers so that they can digest how the program will impact them and how they would have done historically. Those performance reports that related on quality measures, et cetera. And then these forums will be key, again, to doing more provider engagement moving forward and making sure that providers have time to ask their questions and raise concerns. And then we'll be putting out further doula integration guidance policies. PMC, who presented last time, primary maternity care, has been helping us with that process along the way. So let me pause and see if there's any questions or comments at this point. Seeing none, I think Carson, I'll pass you for the next slide, I think.
Yep, great. Thank you, Brad. So we just wanted to provide an update on a couple of pieces of the program. One being the bundle attribution, which we talked about previously, and the other being third-party liability. So wanted to bring back some further findings here. As you can see here, we used 2021 data and identified that about 89% of members who are enrolled will enroll in Medicaid in their first or second trimester, which means that those members would be eligible for the prospective payment as long as they meet any of the additional criteria. So that is a bulk of the folks who should be able to be eligible for being included in the prospective payment. Based on the historical data, we did a little bit further analysis of the data and saw a slight increase in the attribution rate of about 70% of pregnancies would be attributed to a provider and be eligible for those prospective payments. Any non-attributed pregnancies are due to not being enrolled by the second trimester or maybe not having a visit with an eligible trigger code in the second trimester. So as you may recall, that having a visit in the second trimester with an appropriate trigger code is what initiates that payment, those prospective payments. So we're finding that about 70% of pregnancies based on historical data would match the criteria. In order to address that and think about bringing those numbers up, there would be a lot around encouraging an earlier enrollment, which is not only going to help with triggering the prospective payment, but also obviously getting people in to see their provider sooner is beneficial. And also providing clear guidance to providers for what are those trigger codes, so they're clear about what they should be billing to ensure that they do trigger that prospective payment. So before we jump to talking about TPL, I'll take a pause and see if Brad or your team, if you want to add anything else, or if anybody has any questions here.
No, that's great. Thanks, Carson. Yeah, just to say, we obviously want to include as many people as we can. And so I had to work through some of the details on the TPL, and we appreciate the Mercer's team helping provide some guidance on how we could work to make sure we can include as many people as we can.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brad. So then just shifting to the TPL, I think when we brought this last time, there was ongoing discussion about whether or not folks who had TPL would be included in the bundle. So just for a grounding, about 12% of members have third-party liability coverage overall for known deliveries. And so DSS was exploring the feasibility of whether or not to include those members, and have come up with a way in which that they find that they can include anybody who has TPL in the maternity bundle program. So I think that's a positive for sure, to be able to include those folks in the bundle. Any questions for TPL?
Mark?
Thanks. So this probably should be obvious to me, but so are you talking about situations where private coverage is primary and Medicaid is secondary, payer of last resort? Is that what we're talking about here, or can you say a bit more about it?
Yeah. So when there's another payer involved, it can be a variety of different different levels of coverage. Mark, I think you should probably know, sometimes it'll be either workers' comp, or it can be another primary payer that someone had insurance for. And sometimes it is a true payer, and sometimes it's, someone that the information hasn't been updated correctly. And Scott or Sandy or anyone else on the team can probably be a little bit more specific than me, given their expertise. Do you guys want to jump in and provide any further definitional context here?
I would only add that, there could be coverage for from auto insurers, for example, if a person is in a car accident. There's all sorts of third-party coverage that could apply. And yes, in general, they would be primary, Medicaid would be secondary. Medicare is a significant one, of course. And that is one exception we're still debating because only of data availability. If Medicare is primary, we don't always get all the data for those Medicare dual eligible members. So we're still researching the Medicare issue, but it's a pretty small proportion of the total membership who deliver.
So this, if you don't mind, if I can ask a follow-up question. If Medicaid would be, let's take a simple example of somebody has commercial coverage through, say, Anthem or Cigna. Medicaid is secondary. And so there's the Medicaid's covering the crossover claims or the cost share or what have you. It seems to me that it's difficult to do a savings arrangement if you're not primary for the cost of the episode, if Medicaid isn't.
Well, in this process, our intent would be to include the third party payment as part of the overall cost for the bundle. So when the secondary claim comes to Medicaid, there's a record of the amount paid by the primary payer. And so we would add those two components together in the development of the overall program costs and therefore savings and losses.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we spent a fair amount of time talking about this. As you can imagine, it's fairly complicated and some challenges, but obviously a goal of trying to include as many, with the overarching goal of trying to include as many people as we can, still being a major driver of this. So thanks again to the Mercer team for helping us work through some of these details. I know there'll be more to come on this as well.
So if there are no more questions here, then Brad, I can pass it back to you.
Sure. So again, talking about kind of next steps in terms of stakeholder engagement, which I think, as noted at the top, a key reason for us to delay the launch is just to make sure that we can engage further with various stakeholders, not just those that are involved in this advisory council. And so we'll be setting up in June. There's a few provider webinar. There's one on talking about doulas and how the role of doulas in the maternity bundle. And that will be coming up, as well as a doula webinar to talk with doulas about their participation in the maternity bundle as well. There'll be a provider forum that we're organizing about educating, answer questions about the maternity bundle for providers that either haven't been involved or are looking for more information. I'm definitely interested in making sure we're connecting with a wide variety of providers that would be participating in this, so they have an understanding of what this could mean for them, and just to have them engaged moving forward, so that as we get closer to launch, again with the updated launch date of January 1, 2024, that they can know who to communicate with. They have outreach channels to engage with us, and many of them already are engaged pretty closely with our partners at CHN, many of who are on the call today. And so we'll be using those channels to communicate and do outreach and also coordinate some of these forums. And then we'll be working on a provider bulletin to provide, again, some of these technical details so that the program's explained in a way that people understand how it could potentially impact them, obviously still needing to have that historical run of data so that providers can see that in front of them. So again, that's for the fall, aiming to make sure that we can have the performance reports available for that next phase. So one is obviously understanding the details of how the program is going to work, and then actually seeing an example of how it would impact the practice. We think those are really important and instrumental to making sure providers feel comfortable and understand how this will impact them in the care that they're delivering. And we want to make sure there's adequate time for providers to see that and ask questions and discuss. And then another provider forum we were planning on having, again, make sure we're talking about the information about the launch, the details around the impact of those reports, and also just an opportunity for providers at large to ask questions to us. And then ongoing, we'll be planning on convening this advisory council in an ongoing manner, at kind of more as needed, but I anticipate we will definitely want to get all of you back together and hear from you sometime over the summer or into the early fall. Again, we're really working on trying to get the details operationalized on our end. There's a lot of things that are in the weeds to make sure that this can work. And so that's really where we're going to be spending a lot of our time in the next few months. So let me pause and see if there's any questions or if there's any other comments. And actually, Guy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else. I know you're on, so I didn't turn to you at the top.
No problem, Brad. I was having technical issues joining at the beginning. I'm good. Keep going.
Great. And I just have to unmute myself. So I did want to open this. Any questions about engagement? Again, today we are sending messages out through our and we'll get into it in a second. Just want to say we are trying to communicate this in multiple forums to providers, especially about the delay in launch, because we know that's really important. So let me pause. Representative Leeper, please feel free to jump in.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for being a few minutes late. I actually got grabbed in the hall by some DSS folks to talk about the maternity bundle. But I think this information is really helpful. Of course, I would love the rollout to be sooner rather than later, but absolutely sensitive to how kind of complicated this is. I guess one question is, I don't see any mention of lactation sort of at all through this bundle, and any sort of outreach with providers or any sort of education to ensure providers understand that lactation is a part of the bundle and like what their role will be. And so I was just wondering if you had any sort of insights on that.
Yes, I think understandably lactation is a really important part of improving the health and well-being and outcomes as part of improvements on maternal health in general. We are obviously allocating some resources to lactation support as part of this, understanding that it is a smaller portion than we are allocating towards doula services. We will provide some guidance of what we expect for providers as part of that support, which we haven't definitively outlined, but we will and do want to provide that, understanding that some providers do already either work with or work closely with IBCLCs or CLCs or other support networks. I think providers are generally probably more familiar than working with doulas. And so obviously we've put a little bit more emphasis on the doula aspect, but not minimizing the importance that lactation support has for improving the health and well-being of birthing people and children. So there will be more to come. It is something that we've been talking about. You're right, we haven't necessarily highlighted as part of this. I think partially because of some of the ongoing work that a lot of providers have either told us about or we've heard about that they are doing either with lactation support or in their practice or around their practice.
Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, on the provider forum in June, we'll talk about we'll follow this portion of the program.
I appreciate that. Thanks. I just want to make sure that providers are thinking of lactation as a part of the bundle and not necessarily that it's doulas only, just in thinking about how we can be most comprehensive and like the continuum of care for birthing people and our infants, especially our most vulnerable. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you for flagging. Yeah, I think it'll definitely be something we want to bring up because there is money we're providing to providers for that. And it's important that we highlight that as part of this, as part of our outreach efforts. Mark.
Thanks, Brad. The we have a longer list of technical questions from our members that we'll share with you separately. So I just had a question more about process, and that is I understand that in August you're going to provide technical details of the program's bundled policy, payment program policies and processes. I'm wondering whether you can provide the most comprehensive, a comprehensive set of technical details and methods and policies in advance of the publication of the provider bulletin, because usually that represents a sort of, this is the program, so that there's an opportunity to provide input on some of the finer points where provider feedback might influence, sort of the operational feasibility of aspects of the model. That's number one. And the other is whether you could consider doing some case scenarios, especially where MFM practices are involved. There's an interest in understanding, having some case stories, if you will, in mind about how the bundle works, in addition to the simulations you're planning to do, which I have to tell you, I strongly support and appreciate.
I would love to definitively commit to that, Mark, in terms of providing that information. I just want to make sure that we can internally meet that. So again, our colleagues at Mercer are helping us rework, make sure we have the details nailed down. And so I would love to say yes. I think we can circle around internally to see if that's feasible or not. But I understand the desire to have, commentary and feedback. A lot of this should look fairly familiar to those who've been participating in this process along the way. That definitely was the goal, is to make sure that that we shouldn't have a lot of surprises. Obviously, there's always a lot of things in the weeds that some folks will want to review and understandably provide feedback on. So I can't publicly commit us to that. I will say it will be something we can discuss to see timing wise if we can get anything out ahead of time for comment. The other question was, no, I didn't take it. Oh, the case study. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I think we're realistically probably going to need to wait till we get a little bit closer to being able to provide those provider reports, to being able to do that. It's something else we can probably discuss. I understand the concern. It makes sense. If you're working with an MFM group under the same TIN, how does that impact your practice? I think that's something obviously we want to provide to providers. I'm just not certain timing wise when we'll realistically be able to do that at this time. So probably put 2 pins in both of those as things that we will discuss and see what we can do.
Thank you.
Not sure if anybody has any additional questions. This is actually our last slide today. So please feel free to jump in. We've got plenty of time if you have a question, but if not, we can certainly close out early. Brad, anything you want to close with?
No, I'll just say, I think, one, we continue to appreciate the engagement and the feedback you've provided and the pushes to DSS on this. And I think we'll continue to look to all of you as we get ready for launch, and we'll continue to need input on this as we get closer to go live and actually post go live, because we know this program will need ongoing provider and stakeholder engagement to improve it over time. I think we'll keep saying it, that it won't be perfect when we launch it. No programs ever are, and there's always opportunities to improve them over time. And so we definitely see this as something that we'll need to continue to refine and work and improve to improve the health and well-being of our members and the newborns. And so we will be looking to all of you for that, and I'm certain many of you will be willing to provide that over time. So just calling that out is something that we see as a fundamental feature of this. And I don't know if anyone, I think, I was going to say, I think Mada was not able to join today, but I wanted to make sure she didn't get to join late to see if she wanted to add anything else, but I think she had a conflict today. So any other outstanding questions today? So mostly we wanted to, again, alert you to the delay in the launch, again, from this July to January 1, 2024, discuss some of the some of our updates to attribution, and then make sure to flag the upcoming provider and other forum engagements that we think are really important to make this successful, and something we've heard directly from a lot of providers the need for. So really, that's the big reason for today. So let me pause, see if there's any other questions. If not, Guy, anything you want to close with? No. Okay.
I think, well, yeah.
All right. Well, I do, again, thank you all. We on our end have a lot of work to do. So, and I'm sure you will all appreciate the extra hour of time as we close up session. And we do, again, anticipate hearing from you all in this process. So thank you again for the commitment, and we'll be reaching out to schedule something else again, probably later in the summer as we do more of